Yeah. No pun intended. All right. So compound interest is different than just saying your initial investment, adding your interest rate, and taking your number of years. Okay. Quite often, if you look at what the bank is offering to you as an interest rate, you're going to see the letters APR, okay? And if you were to pull out a section of the paper where, you know, the bank stuff is, the investments and all of that, you'll see APR quite often. And what APR is annual percentage rate.
I thought it was like a place.
Okay, annual percentage rate. So that's one thing that you need to know. Now, another thing you need to know about compound interest is when we get interest each year, you know, we might, I mean, they'll calculate what we get for our investment for the year. That's the interest that you get for that year, okay? But sometimes, and this is not as normal as it used to be, but sometimes we have compounding interest, and it can be yearly, it can be annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, all right? But that changes actually what we're earning, okay? Because say I have quarterly compounding. Okay, so over the course of a year, so I go along, all right, quarterly is 4 times a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I go along for the first quarter, and I get 1/4.
Is this about 5 though?
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 quarters of your year.
Yeah, I was counting by the marks.
Don't count the marks. This is where I start. So after a quarter, they take a quarter of my interest and deposit it in my account. Okay? So my balance, which was here, now gets a quarter of the interest and is a little bit more, okay? So for the second quarter, I'm going along, and they take another 1/4 of the interest, but it's now interest that I earned on more money. Okay, so now instead of earning interest on just my money, I get my interest, a quarter of my interest rate on my money plus the bank's money for that quarter. So at the end of the second quarter, the bank takes that interest and deposits it in my account. All right, so now I've got a little bit extra money. And it's the bank's. Okay. So the third quarter, I'm earning interest on the bank, on my money, plus what the bank deposited at the end of the first quarter, plus what they deposited at the end of the second quarter. Okay. And it keeps going like that for a year. All right. So with quarterly compounding, each quarter, the bank deposits 1/4 of the annual rate of the annual interest into the account. Okay, So that not only changes my interest rate, because that's going to happen again, you know, where, so each quarter they take the interest that I earned, they deposit it in. So each quarter, the money I'm earning interest on grows. Do you guys understand the concept? So after every quarter, it's not only my money, but it's my money plus the bank's money. And then the next quarter, the bank puts in even more, so I'm earning interest on a greater sum of money. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a lot better than just earning interest on my deposit for a year and getting that straight amount. Because you're going to make more money on $1,100 than you would on $1,000, right? Okay. Not saying that you're going to get $100 at the quarter, but that at least gives you a perspective. If you're earning interest on a larger amount of money, it's going to be more interest. Yes? Okay. So that's the concept. But this is what changes what you're doing. Because if my number of years is 5, then quarterly interest goes in 5 times 4 times. Because it's deposited 4 times a year for 5 years. So your X will not be 5, it'll be 5 times 4 times a year. Does that make sense? You get it every quarter for 5 years. So it's your X would be 20, okay? So you have to look at how many times it's going to be deposited over how many years. Okay, but back up here, you don't say your interest rate was 4%. They're not going to give you 4% every quarter. If your annual rate is 4%, you're going to get a fourth of that. So every quarter, they're going to give you 1%. So by the end of the year, you've gotten 4%. Does that make sense? So there are 2 things that we have to change with compounding interest. All right? So I think we're going to do a chart. Annual is what you've been doing. Annual is 1 time per year. Semi-annual happens how often? No, twice a year, every 6 months, 2 times per year. Quarterly, we just talked about, is 4 times per year. And monthly would be how many times? 12. Okay, now monthly is almost unheard of, right, in this day and age. Quarterly might even be, because that costs the banks a lot of money, and they're not in it to give you money, they're in it to make money. So it costs them too much to give you quarterly or monthly compounding. Okay, but what this means for your X, which would be your years, or be based on your years. Okay, you're going to do your years times 1, so there's really no change for annual. That's what you've been doing. Semi-annual, you do your years times 2, because they're going to deposit interest in twice a year. Okay, Quarterly is going to be your years times 4, and monthly would be your years times 12. But, and this is the part that people kind of struggle with a little bit, your interest rate, okay, and this is not B yet, okay? Our interest rate, remember I said, you only get a portion of your interest at those intervals. So if it's annual, my interest rate, I'm going to just give you an example. We'll use the interest rate of 4%, just for example's sake. Your interest rate would be 4%. Okay, for semi-annual, you're going, instead of multiplying by 2, you're going to divide by 2. It would be 4 divided by 2, so you get 2%. Quarterly would be 4 divided by 4, so you'd get 1%. And monthly would be 4 divided by 12, which is a third, so you get 0.33%. Okay, now that is only your interest. So make a note here. Add the interest rate to 100%, then change to a decimal. Okay, because this is going to affect your B. This would be 104%, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be 1.04. I don't know if you want to write that in small. B is 1.04. Here, your B would be 1.02. What would it be here? 1.01. And this one?
1.0033.
Yeah, 1.0033. Okay, so when you have compounding interest, anything but annual, you don't have to do anything different really than what you have been. But if it's compounding and it's semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly, we have to multiply the years, divide the interest, and you do the division of the interest before you add it to 100, okay? Because remember, you still get 100% of your money plus interest.
Do we actually have to like divide the 4 divided by 2, or can we just remember that it's 2%?
You can remember, I mean, it's not hard to go, well, I get a fourth or I get a half of 4%, okay? But it's not always going to be 4%, all right? So I'm going to give you a scenario, and we're actually going to do compounding for that one scenario and see how it changes, all right? Okay, so you are going to invest $20,000 for 10 years, okay? But we're going to actually complete a chart to see how that works out. Yep. Okay, so annual, it would be y equals up, and we need an interest rate. So instead of 4, let's do 6. Okay. Now, 6% is pretty high for today's standards, but if you're investing for guaranteed 10 years, you might get 6. I don't know what the rates are right now. They're probably better than they were 5 years ago. Okay, so your setup, remember, is always y equals a times b to the x. We're going to use that every single time. But we're doing the compounding for annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly. Okay? All right. So we'll do this below. You get 6%. So it's 100% plus 6%, or 106%. So B would be 1.06. And it's 10 years, so that would be to the 10th.
It's like 1.7908476697.
What is it?
1.7908476697.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
times 20,000, right?
Yeah. I thought you were looking for that.
Okay. So $35,816.95. That is straight interest, no compounding. Well, sorry, annual compounding. With annual compounding, that means at the end of the year, they put your interest in before the next year. Okay, so a little bit of compounding, annual.
You have to do it for semi-annual, annual.
Yeah.
So animal.
So semi-annual, you're still depositing the same amount of money. Okay, but it is 2 times per year for 10 years. So that changes our x, right? So x should be 10 times 2.
20.
So x is 20. And our interest, we're not getting 6%. Okay?
Why 10 times 2?
Because it's going in twice a year for 10 years. 2 times a year for 10 years is 20 times. Okay. So you take the number of years times the frequency. Okay, but my interest rate, I don't get 6%. If it's going in twice a year, I get 3%. I have to do 6% divided by 2, which is 3%. So that would be 100% plus 3%. Yeah, so B is 1.03.
I got 36122.22.
Yes. Now, look at, you didn't put in anything different, right?
Right.
You put in $20,000 for the same amount of time, but instead of $35,816 with semi-annual compounding instead of annual, you'd get $36,122. Okay? And you didn't put in anything different. That was just compounding. The bank was depositing your interest sooner than it would have. Okay, let's do quarterly. Same amount of money. But I get, with quarterly, it's 4 times per year for 10 years.
40.
So x equals 40. And I have to take my interest rate, and instead of dividing it by 2, I get 1/4 of it. So that's 1.5%. added to the 100% of my money.
1.015, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so 1.015.
I got 36280.36. 37.
Yep. Okay, so still slightly more than what you would have gotten even at the semi-annual, right? Okay, I'm running out of room here. Monthly. Is 12 times per year for 10 years. So X would be 120, right? And I have to take my 6% interest, but I only get it, I get a 1/12 of it every month. So that would be 0.5%. So 100 plus 0.5.
1.005.
Yep, is 1.005. So writing very small. So I have 20,000 times 1.005 to the 120th power.
I got 36387.93.
Yep. So 36387.93. So instead of earning $35,816 on your investment, with monthly you'd earn $36,387. Doesn't seem like an earth-shattering amount, but think about people who are investing like $1 million. That's going to be an even bigger difference, right? 20,000 is a drop in the bucket for some people. Okay. So compounding interest, if you are investing money and you have the opportunity to get compounding interest, if you plan on leaving it there, you go for the compounding interest. Okay, it's always worth more than, like putting into a savings account and just getting a straight rate.